So, good morning and welcome to this workshop, Resilience in a Sea of Systems. I'm Stacy Geringer, Director of Outreach at the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare, also known as CASHU. Thanks again for joining us. This webinar is a partnership with the Center for Practice Transformation, which is also located in the School of Social Work at the University of Minnesota and is funded through the School of Social Work at the U and the Title IV-E grant facilitated by the Minnesota Department of Human Services with federal funding provided by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We're really excited to have Steve Carlson, who's a clinical trainer with the Center for Practice Transformation, join us for our fourth and final webinar of this month. This will be an hour long with lots of opportunity for engagement. So we encourage you to raise your hand or use the chat or the Q&A. I'll first just run through a few housekeeping items, and we'll also put this in the chat. This webinar will be recorded and emailed out to all registrants and attendees, and it will also be posted on our website. CEUs will be emailed to all attendees in the next week or so. And then, like I said, we just really encourage you to participate by using the chat or using the hand raising function. You may also use the Q&A. I will now let Steve begin.
Thanks, Stacy. And welcome, everybody. Good to be with you again for our fourth webinar. And I do emphasize the participation again this time. I think I'll be stopping my share of screen about 4 times just to get your input and your thoughts and ideas. So please participate. That would help me a great deal. And I think sharing with each other would be very useful to each other. So all your ideas are really valuable. This topic, our fourth, is a topic of resilience in a sea of systems, which, by the way, when I did the listening session in our first week, by far, the dealing with systems was the most difficult part of being in child welfare work and the most stressful part. So we'll be talking about systems, but more so we'll be talking about what is your circle of influence. We did the listening session first, and this is a kind of looking back on what we've covered. And then there was some enjoyable conversation, meaningful conversation around the impact of doing child welfare work, or what we call the result of caring. What happens by being a caring person, and especially caring for vulnerable kids, and the impact that has on our work life around compassion fatigue and burnout and vicarious trauma. Last week, I focused in on the sanctuary model as an organizational change system to support us and our teams to be healthy, creative, supportive, and helpful to us in our work. I didn't have a chance to get into how to implement the sanctuary model. I can tell you that the Sanctuary Institute has a 4-year process for supporting organizations in implementing the sanctuary model. It's pretty arduous and pretty significantly involved. And so I didn't have a chance really to cover that at all, but you can find the Sanctuary Institute online if you want more information about that. And again, today we're going to focus on systems. I'm not going to talk a lot about specific systems, but more how are we as child welfare workers interacting with the system and finding our own resilience in all of these systems that we need to interact with in child welfare. And all of you know this very, very well, what all these systems are. And there's even more than these particular systems that I have identified. But this is the areas of our greatest stress and our greatest need for resilience. So today, I'm going to start with a brief mindfulness meditation, and then tap Stephen Covey's work in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People around circle of concern, circle of influence, and circle of control. And then end with a little bit about gratitude and how that supports our resilience as well. So I'm going to start with a brief meditation on gratitude with a focus in on gratitude for life. So settle yourself into a comfortable place and just take this moment now to allow your feet to be grounded on the floor and your arms resting at your sides, and simply allow yourself to enter into a moment of calm. You don't have to close your eyes, but you can if you like, or you can simply soften your gaze as you let go of focusing in on any one object or any one thought. This is a good time to let go of any tasks that you were working on before we started this webinar, or the thoughts about tasks that you have to do yet today, and just be present now. Wherever you are in this moment, simply be here now. As you ease your way into this expansive yet grounded quality of consciousness, into this presence, letting your whole self relax, body and mind, take in a deep cleansing breath and hold it for just a few seconds. Then exhale with as long of a breath as you can. By breathing out, we do begin to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our body's way of calming ourselves down. And by letting go of future planning or self consciousness or the illusion of control, we enter into the only moment that actually exists, and that is right now. From this place of contented awareness, with the calm you feel at the center of your being, take in another deep breath and relax into the awareness of who you truly are and the purpose you have in what Mary Oliver calls this one wild and precious life. In this moment of quiet awareness, celebrate the work you have done in your life to be as healthy as you are right now. With gratitude, thank the people who have supported you in your life journey. Perhaps you have a mentor or a teacher, a parent or grandparent, a partner, someone who supports you. Someone perhaps has gone before you and reaches back to show you the way or modeled to you how to live the one precious life you have. I'm going to read a poem by Lynn Unger, a poem about universal acceptance, a poem of letting go of control. This poem, called The Way It Is, highlights how the mystery of the universe, in its many names and forms, seems to take care of what needs to be taken care of. And in the process, we too are taken care of. The Way It Is by Lynn Unger. One morning, you might wake up to realize the knot in your stomach has loosened itself and slipped away, and that the pit of unfilled longing in your heart had gradually, and without your really noticing, been filled in, patched like a pothole, not quite the same as it was, but good enough. And in that moment, it might occur to you that your life, though not the way you planned it, and maybe not even entirely the way you wanted it, is nonetheless persistently, abundantly, miraculously, exactly what it is. With this deep acceptance of life as it is, Allow your attention to rest in gratitude. Breathe in and breathe out. And although the world around us is not the way we may want it to be, it is nonetheless, persistently, abundantly, miraculously, exactly what it is. So come on back into our common space here, perhaps with a little bit of refreshed sense of well-being or centeredness or finding that inner space inside yourself. And I'd like to start with a poll. And it's basically a question of fill in the blank. If I could change one thing about this system, the child welfare system, what would I do? If you had control over changing one thing about the system, what would you do? And so you can just show that poll, Nora, so that people can take it if you've got it there. If I could change one thing about the system, what would I do? Make it fairer, make it more open to hearing all sides, streamline it, reduce the paperwork requirements, make it less adversarial, make it more responsive, or get rid of it altogether. And maybe there's something else that you want to put in the chat, or even just raise your hand and comment on it about this system that is perhaps the most stressful part of our work. What would you want to do? All of the results are coming in. Thank you for your opinions, your ideas around this. And so we have about 73% have commented. Eliminate racism is also one in the chat. Thank you, Francine. Okay, well, a couple yet coming in, but maybe we can go ahead and post this. And so what I'm seeing here is make it less adversarial is the top one, followed closely by reducing the paperwork or all of the requirements that you have in order to give to the system. So the need for the paperwork, and further down the list is to make it more responsive. So especially the part around making it less adversarial, which is very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing those. And somebody asked the poem. That was Lynn Unger, U-N-G-E-R, Lynn Unger, The Way It Is. Okay, well, thank you for commenting on this. Let me just come on back to the PowerPoint and continue on. There's the results, if you didn't see them. So what I'm going to be talking about and interacting with you on is these concentric circles. If you want to draw them out or draw 3 columns, because we're going to be going through all 3 of these today and interacting on them. And as you can see, the largest circle, the red one, is the circle of concern. This is all of the things that we are concerned about in the welfare system. And I'm going to ask you about what are all of those things in just a moment. Next is a little bit smaller circle, the yellow. That's the circle of influence. Where do we have an impact, but we don't have control? And then finally, what is the circle of control? What do we actually have control over? So these are the three areas that I'm going to focus in with you on, and we're going to explore a little bit together. So first of all, I want to find out from you, would you say, as a child welfare worker in this system, what do you worry about the most? What are the things that concern you the most, or that are your circle of concern? What do you, probably the best way is, what do you worry about the most? When you, at the end of the day, what do you worry about? Who'd be willing just to, throw some things out, put them in the chat. What do you worry about the most? What is this circle of concern that you have? Anybody? Thanks, Alan. Worker well-being in the midst of the difficult work that we all do. So that sense of your staff, those that you supervise, their own wellness and their own ability to live a good life, a healthy life, without having impact on their physical well-being, their mental well-being, emotional well-being, and on their relationships as a result of working in the child welfare system. Thank you. That the children are truly being loved. Heidi, thank you. Yes, that kids that we, that are living in families where they are have such a potential of being harmed and growing up with these adverse childhood experiences, not having adequate technology to manage work that cannot be done as it was pre-pandemic, trying to work on Zoom, trying to work over the phone, trying to work with masks on, whatever it might be. And to actually get satisfaction and feelings of making a difference, that compassion, satisfaction, that sense of self-efficacy in our work, sense of that I'm actually making a difference. Families lacking adequate social support systems. Thank you. Yeah, they can be very isolated, the families that are out there. So these are all things that are part of the things that we worry about, part of the things that we carry with us, part of the things that weigh us down, that have an influence on our own well-being, on our own mental health and physical health. I know that the more that our amygdala, our sympathetic nervous system is activated and our stress response system is activated, it takes a toll on our health and our wellness. And we likely are not responding in ways that are ultimately helpful for others. So I want to shift from circle of concern, and there are so many things. And I mean, we also, I guess I just want to add, we add on to that all of the news stories we hear about what's happening in Afghanistan or in the Middle East or in the fires that are going on. This also adds to our circle of concern. So I want to talk a bit about the circle of control and circle of influence. And I'm going to be asking you, who has the most control in the child welfare services system? I want to start by talking about a judge. You may have heard of him. It's Judge Sean Flurkey, who is up in DOI court up in Duluth in the 6th District. And you may have heard him even speak at a conference somewhere. He talks about the role of compassion in being a judge. These are some of the things that he says. Shaming doesn't help. Showing compassion does. There's so much us and them. Saying to one of his clients in the courtroom, "You were honest about it. I got no rocks to throw at you." So Sean Flurkey is a judge, as I said, up in Duluth. and likely has a whole lot more influence and control than many of us do. But we all have our own areas of influence, our own circle of influence, our own circle of control. Judge Flurkey literally goes out with his clients who have community service requirements and picks up trash, for example, along the North Shore. Or he goes to graduations for his clients who are finishing treatment. So what I want to find out from you is who has the most control within the system? Where is the most control coming from in child welfare services? And go ahead, put that in the chat, or once again, it can be a bit of a discussion. But who has the most control in your experience, or most influence in this system? I'm guessing that many of you are not going to say it's you that has the greatest amount of control and influence. Is it judges? Is it attorneys? Is it mandates? Is it the laws? Is it the public? Where do you see, who has the most control? Not an easy question, apparently. Hard to answer. Kendrick, thank you. It depends on the timing and where folks are in the process. Kendrick, would you be willing to just say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for me, the thing with that is about how families are able to show up, how the workers are able to show up, how all those other pieces of the puzzle are able to show up, and so the timing relates to what might be pressing in terms of there's a paperwork that's due or anything like that. But depending on how the person embodies in any of those roles, the impact can be exponential. And I think somebody said we don't often actually know exactly what that impact is. I mean, pretty sure there are workers who've had situations where you've engaged with a family and maybe it probably didn't go as well as you might have wanted it to in that space, but nevertheless, years down the line, you hear that that family really appreciated how you showed up for them. And so we don't always necessarily see it. So sometimes I can definitely feel how it doesn't feel like there's any control at all, but that personal interaction does a lot.
Very interesting. Thank you, Kendrick. Yes, it's sort of like the control shifts and changes depending upon where a family is in the process of going through the system and where they're at developmentally as a family. And so the kind of control shifts and changes. And Melissa says, we all have control over different things. So it's like a multi-dimensional system where each of us are somehow influencing, or at least, I guess I differentiate between influence and control. We all have certain different amounts of control and influence, which are kind of two different things. Francine, thanks. Those in decision-making positions. And Francine, you want to just speak to that as to who do you see is in those decision-making positions, particularly in the system? You comment on that if you have capability.
Yeah, it kind of depends on which system that we're talking about in relation to child welfare. If you're talking about for example, the foster care system, right? So the initial investigators that come out are the ones that make the initial decision. They're in the decision-making capacity. They determine whether or not that child is removed, whether or not there's been some neglect, whatever the case may be. And from that point on, once that child is in the system, then the system just takes over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. So investigators who will make decisions, and then who does that get passed on to if they decide, yes, this is going to enter the system, somebody else that has decision-making powers?
Right, then it goes on, I think, to the social workers. The social workers step in at that point, and they assess the situation and determine if the child will be permanently, not permanently, but there's a whole process that
Mhm.
they go through,
Yeah.
that the child will go through. But the trauma is lifetime.
Yes. Yes.
The damage is lifetime. And in some cases, in most cases, I would say, it adds to the trauma of just removing them from the home.
Yeah. Right. That's the hard part. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, I think this is an important conversation about the difference between control and influence. And because I think at any point in time, no matter who or what, quote, is in control, I think individually in our work, we always have influence on how that plays itself out and how we can work with our clients in relationship to whatever that control piece is. I think sometimes we get to feeling like, okay, it's out of my hands now because now it's in the court system. Well, yes and no. There's certain things that are out of your hand, but we still have the ability to work with the clients in terms of how they relate and work with the court and so on. And we have the ability to influence the decisions of the courts to a certain degree as well. So I think we always need to keep in mind that even though we don't feel like we've got control per se, we do have influence, and we need to work hard at how we can exercise that.
Hmm. I think that's well said. I can see where distinguishing where do I have control here, and where do I have influence, and how do I step into either one of those places as the need arises.
I think the influence comes in play when that case, and I'm talking particularly in the foster care system, I think the influence comes in when that child goes to court, because at that point, it's in the hands of the judicial or the judge to determine the direction in which that case will go. But however, up until that point, it may be the perception that there's some influence at below that level, but I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
In what way, Francine?
Well, because the control, like I said before, it starts when the investigators come out.
Mm-hmm.
And that decision, that's a major decision right there.
Yeah.
After that decision is made, the investigators have done their part and they move forward to remove the child from the home. Now another system is in place. They move from that initial system to a system that has to play itself out. There's no influence right there. That's going to go as it's going to go until it gets to the judge or the courtroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everything in between there is not influenced in any way by any of those individuals.
Uh-huh.
That system is going to play itself out till it gets to the courtroom.
Okay.
Now we're talking about how the child is being affected by this process and all the individuals in there. That's different, because then you have child care workers and you have, trauma specialists, and you have all these individuals, the foster parents themselves, highly trained, I'm gonna say highly trained. And so they kind of comfort that child to a certain extent. So you have two things going on there. They don't have any influence on the direction of how that process is going to go. They are merely there or the perception is to support the child mental emotional state at that time.
Thank you. Yeah, Alan, do you want to just respond to that?
Yeah, I kind of take issue with that a little bit, and because even when the case goes to court, we still have influence because we write reports, we put information together, we are able to speak up in court. I just believe so firmly, and I've seen it happen so many times when when how we present the information, how we talk about it, how we write about it, and then how we speak to it when we're given a chance to influences the decisions that the court makes. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I guess, I know in my experience, it's been a lot about developing a sense of reputation and competency as a worker, and also developing a relationship with the court, with the judge, with the county attorney in a way that your opinion and your ideas have some value and merit in their eyes. So I just think that all along that process, we still can influence outcome, but also how it's being experienced by the child and by the family.
Thank you.
Well, I respectfully disagree. Having gone through that process, having been a part of that process, there's that perception, but perception is not always reality. So I respectfully disagree.
And this disagreement has influence over, 30 some people listening to all of us to see, where do I land on this, and what is my own experience? How do I influence, and how do I bring that influence? When can I bring the influence, and when do I have to let go of the decisions? For the sake of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about where I see the circle of control as, from this perspective, is I have control over how much awareness of my own reaction when coming up against the system, so that I can understand the information coming to me based on the emotion, the feeling, frustration, happiness, whatever it might be, is I can be aware of my reaction and have control over that. Control over my own attitude, compassion for myself and others when interacting with systems. And then a certain amount of control over how I advocate for myself, my team, my clients, for children, and my viewpoint when it can be given, at opportune times for that to be, whenever that can be given, as Alan mentioned in reports, but as Francine said, maybe it doesn't have influence, but the control is really fully our own internal response to things. I think we could say we have that kind of control. Martin Luther King said it this way. I think perhaps this, in a sense, is one of our areas that we especially can have influence, where maybe control and influence come together. He says what is needed is a realization that power without love, or influence without love, is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. One teacher describes the difference between forced will and essential will. Forced will is trying to have control over, or a domination system. Influence with is that essential will, or that speaking, one wisdom book said, speaking truth in love. So that's just a thought to have around this, the confluence of control and influence. Well, according to Stephen Covey, as I move along here, Stephen Covey describes these two elements, the circle of concern and circle of influence. And as you can see, the circle of concern is bigger. We have concern about many more things than we actually have influence over. And the circle of concern, as we focus our attention on that, it's a negative energy, and it reduces, it depletes our energy. It's a negative energy that actually depletes our own energy, because we don't have control over all aspects of our circle of concern. So the more we focus in on the circle of concern, which we need to have a circle of concern, but the more we focus on that, the smaller actually our circle of influence becomes. The more we focus in on our circle of influence, that proactive focus, it actually enlarges or pushes out pushes out and increases our circle of influence, according to Stephen Covey. And there are various ways that we can do that. But I want to find out, first of all, where do you see, in continuing this discussion, what is that circle of influence that you have as in child welfare? Where are those elements of influence that you have? Go ahead and just put that into the chat as well. Or go ahead and respond. Alan, I don't know if you want to continue. You mentioned in reports, in other ways. What are some of the ways that you act? Where is your circle of influence?
Sure, since you've invited me. You know, I would add to that, and I kind of hinted at it a little bit, was the idea of relationships. And I think the notion of establishing and developing and maintaining positive relationships with our colleagues, with our supervisors, with our county attorney staff, even with the judge, and our providers, guardian ad litem, for example. You know, they have a tremendous amount of influence in the court system. But if we have a personal relationship with them or a professional relationship with them, I think we can temper some of that process a little bit with all of those parties. So I think in many ways it really is putting a lot of energy into our relationships with the different players in the system to essentially, well, it just gives us credibility. I think it enhances our ability to influence.
Okay, thank you. Francine, do you want to comment on just that? Where do you see in your work, your circle of influence? Where do you see that to the greatest extent? If you
No, I don't have any comment on it.
Okay. All right, thanks. Melissa, you said we all have control over different things. How about influence? As in your work, how have you seen the circle of influence? Where is your circle? Where is your influence that you have? If you have capacity for comment. And you may not, because this technology that someone mentioned, the challenges around the technology of having influence that sometimes limits our influence.
I think I want to make a comment here.
Okay.
And it's not intended to be offensive at all.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I get that, you know, Alan is speaking from a position of privilege. And it just doesn't, in reality, it just doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Relationship or no relationship, it doesn't make a difference. Because at the end of the day, it's going to come out the way it's going to come out, regardless of the relationship for others in society.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Francine. You're coming from a position of your wisdom and knowledge from your place. And it's important that we have all of these ideas out there to be able to have conversations about them. So the idea of broadening my circle of influence, there's a few things, and you may have others. Please feel free to put them in the chat around as you see this circle of influence, focusing in on positive results. I get the sense that, you know, that for some of us, some of you have been in the child welfare system and have seen things go badly or turn out poorly based on, as someone commented, oppressive systems of systems that are even some are tainted towards certain majority or minority positions, that there are a lot of negative results. But to the extent we can have some focus on where there is positive results can influence or broaden, according to Stephen Covey, this circle of influence. Increasing self-awareness as to what works and what doesn't work, and being aware. And it would be, I think, great to have a whole conversation over what Francine is referring to and what Alan is referring to, and have a way to be able to have discussions around both of these perspectives, and increasing our awareness as to the impact of systems and attitudes and racist thoughts and so forth, racist beliefs and practices. Get meaningful mutual support and feedback in our teams as to what's working, those feedback loops I was referring to in the sanctuary model. And knowing what our limits are can also be helpful to know what can I do and what can't I do, scope, and where do I have perhaps influence on broader levels, societal impact or influence in my in the circles that I live and breathe and move and work in. So think about for a second for yourself any sort of action step in your own circle of control around where you can advocate at governmental levels, in family levels, in court levels, in all levels of power. Where can I advocate for fair systems? Where can I advocate? Where can I also monitor my own attitude? As Viktor Frankl said, that there is the space between stimulus and response is where our greatest power lies, is the ability to respond, and having that responsibility, the ability to respond. So where is that action step in your own circle of control? What you have control over, what you don't have control over. And then an action step in terms of your own circle of influence. Where do you have influence? And where do you no longer have influence, where the decision is made and you don't have influence anymore? And what happens around that? What are the areas that you can do around that? The last part is I want to focus in on the role of gratitude. And some of this is maybe related to how we got into this work in the first place, where we got into this work because of certain core values or life experiences or our mentors that taught us about contributing, caring, investing our lives in making the world a better place, or supporting children, whatever it was that led to getting into this line of work and those core values, and reconnecting with those core values. And we talked about in the second week of this series, the safety plan that keeps us connected to our core values when we run into situations where we feel like we aren't heard, where we feel like we don't have a voice, or we feel like we don't have influence, we don't have control, or when somebody is harming us in some way, that we have a safety plan that maintains that sense of psychological safety, physical safety, and emotional safety. And so that we can stay connected to these core values. And then from there, to be able to experience gratitude for what is. A little bit about that Lynn Unger poem, that life is the way it is, to the extent that we learn to live with life as it is, while we also extend influence where we can. And then somewhere in this space about experiencing gratitude for what we have or what works well and so forth. And so I want to show this little video clip of some research and a practice in gratitude. Perhaps you've seen this. It's I find it to be quite powerful in understanding the role of gratitude and resilience. So let me just play this little clip.
Shut up.
What? Wait, wait.
Oh, he's gonna be so embarrassed.
What makes you happy? Having fun? Hanging out with friends? Delicious food? Making money? Well, consider this. Psychologists have scientifically proven that one of the greatest contributing factors to overall happiness in your life is how much gratitude you show. Yeah? Think about that. Go ahead and marinate on it for a second. You can thank me later if you want. It'll make you feel better according to this study. You go ahead and click on it and read it if you want. Or you can keep watching because we read it and we thought it might be fun to test out for ourselves. We gathered a selection of volunteers to act as our subjects. First, we gave them a test. They didn't know what we were looking for, but it gave us a pretty good idea of their current level of happiness. We asked them to close their eyes and think of somebody who was really influential in their life, somebody who did something really amazing or important for them. We had them write down as much as they could about why this person was so important. Now, a lot of them thought at this point the experiment was over, until we really put them on the spot and tried to get them to call that person and read what they wrote about them. Thank you, Jessica. We're gonna have you call your mother. So who is that right person for you?
Person is my sister, Erica.
We're gonna give Erica a call.
Okay.
Who'd you end up picking?
Friend of mine, Craig Ains.
Her name is Dora.
My college accounting instructor.
Really? Is this somebody you're still in touch with today?
No, I'm assuming that he's passed on.
That's a
to
shame.
the great beyond.
You up for it?
Yes.
What would you say if we called up Dora?
Oh, we can try, but she lives in Britain.
In Britain?
I don't know number by heart, dude. This is awful.
That's fine. I don't know my mom's number by heart.
If it's true that those who are going on are looking down on us, maybe he read my chicken scratch.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
You got a second? Where you at, in the hotel?
I am. I'm in the hotel. You scared me when you asked if I had a second. Something's wrong.
No, I'm on like this little TV show, and they told me to talk about the person that influenced me the most, and I picked you, and they're making me call. They're making me call you.
Oh, wonderful!
Hi, you've reached Craig. I'm not here right now.
At the tone, please record your message.
Oh, come on.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Erica, it's me.
All right, so I got to read you this paragraph. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead,
All right.
sweetheart.
All right. The person that influenced me the most would be my mother, Marlo Dawson. She is a single mother of 2. She is a very hard worker and dedicated to her family.
Hey, Craig, this is Loie. This is going to be a funny little voicemail, so I hope you enjoy it.
I'm so sorry for calling you at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I have to read this to you, okay? And you can't say anything, or I don't know. You can respond, but I probably will just keep going. Okay?
Is everything okay?
Yes, but I have to read this out loud to you.
The person who has had the biggest impact on my life outside of Jesus Christ, who is responsible for my existence, was my college accounting instructor. He had a joy and enthusiasm for his job like no other teacher I have ever known.
I love her to death, and she keeps me going with positive talk. She is a woman that knows what she wants and won't give up until it is achieved.
Oh, something. I don't know what. I'm about to cry because that's so beautiful. I have to say that's just wonderful.
I first met Craig on an independent feature film set in Whitefish, Montana. I recently have been sending Craig a lot of positive thoughts as he's suffered a series of health problems. Despite his medical problems, he's continued to work and take pleasure in the small things in life, like sitting quietly with his wife Janine on the porch. Erica is my older sister and my best friend. Sometimes it even feels like we are twins. She's my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She makes me happy because despite all my mistakes and my decisions, she still loves me no matter what.
Your friendship is everything. And you are one of the most important person in my life.
Even when she has a kid and many children, I will love her more than her kids. Okay, maybe not. I will never forget when she flew 3,000 miles at the drop of a phone call to save me from a breakup.
I'm being blessed by having a son like you. I love you.
Bye.
did you do that to me?
I don't know, because they made me do it.
Thank you for picking up. Bye, sweetie.
And then they're like, here, you're gonna write this letter. And then I wrote like this whole long ass letter, which, you know, I like don't write. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, guess what? Now we're gonna call her and you're gonna read her this letter. And I was like, what the f?
Before we let them go, we gave our subjects one more happiness test. Now, we mixed up and rephrased the questions so they didn't know they were taking the same test twice. For those who took the time to actually write something down but couldn't make the phone call for whatever reason, we saw happiness increase between 2 and 4%. Good, but not exactly mind-blowing. Now, for those who actually picked up the phone and personally expressed their gratitude, we saw increases between 4 and 19%. So either way, expressing your gratitude will make you a happier person. But you want to know something really interesting? The person who experienced the biggest jump in happiness was the least happy person who walked in the door. What does that mean? That means if you're having a particularly tough time, trying this out will more likely have a greater impact on you. Trust me, I'm in a lab coat. In fact, while you're at it, film it and upload it to us, and we'll do something awesome with it. I'm Julian, and this has been The Science of Happiness.
Open cake, subscribe.
Shut up.
So, in closing, gratitude, which is essentially appreciating, what is in this moment, promotes a sense of connection and community, which is a key factor in resilience. I mean, in addition to increasing happiness, but it connects us with others. They call it find, remind, and bind, is that the sequence of connection. Also, it's interesting to note that it is our brain, the way our brain works, it's impossible to experience both gratitude and fear at the same time. And I think as our circle of concern increases and begins to overwhelm, I think it creates a sense of fear in us as well. And gratitude can be a way to decrease the impact of our circle of concern so that we can increase our circle of influence. Teams that practice gratitude, according to research from this Brown and Wong, teams that practice gratitude have higher work engagement, job satisfaction, trust, and also perform better. So there are good reasons to practice gratitude as a way to increase resilience. I have just a few minutes for any comments that anyone has, final comments that anybody would like to be able to make around systems and how to manage systems in our circle of influence and circle of control and circle of care. Anybody have anything, final comments that they would like to make, or questions of each other? This is a time to do it.
I'd just like to say thank you for allowing me to have a voice. I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone on the call.
Yes, thanks, Francine. And thank you for bringing in, I don't know fully, but the impact of dominating systems and the impact that they have on us, and how can we become more collaborative in our systems. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no, more comments that anyone has, or questions or anything, Stacy?
Okay, sounds like we're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for joining and for all your participation today. We really appreciate it. As I mentioned, this webinar will be recorded and we'll email it out to everybody, including folks that didn't get to join live today. We'll also post it to our website. And then I will email out CEUs to you all in the next few days. If you would like to check out the Center for Practice Transformation and Steve's podcast, we have these Mindfulness Monday podcasts that Bill just put in the chat, and that they're about 5 to 7 minutes. So you can listen to them as many times as you want. And they're great grounding for social work practice. And then finally, just when we close out of this Zoom, there'll just be a brief survey. We'd love your feedback. Anything you'd be willing to share with us is helpful. Thanks again for those of you who have attended multiple webinars or just this one. We really appreciate it and all your support. And thank you, Janice. That's so nice. And we will be in touch. Please email us at cashew at umn.edu if you have any questions or need anything. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.